In this video, we're going to be talking about the differences between CTFs, hacker training, bug bounties, and pen testing. A CTF, let's start with that one. A CTF is time limited and it is generally a solo or a team event with a leaderboard and loads of points are scored. The aim of a CTF is to get access to a flag, and it's generally in some kind of special format, generally around curly braces. The idea is that you have a specific challenge, that challenge leads you to a flag, and generally there's an escalation process where you can get to a second flag. Challenges are split into different categories, so they may be web applications, for example, or reverse engineering or malware. They change depending on what CTF you are playing. They are generally rated between easy and difficult. So you start with the easy ones, they are worth less points than the harder ones, which are less points again than the most difficult ones. There are generally only 1 or 2 vulnerabilities per challenge. They are somewhat of a training platform, however, they do not generally teach you. You have to be self-learning, you have to go off, you have to find the answers to some of these challenges for yourself. Hacking training. Okay, so these are the platforms such as like TryHackMe, etc., Pentester Labs. These are the ones that are specifically made to try and teach you some of these hacking challenges. These are generally not time limited. They are mostly solo or team-based type events, right? So you can work as a team, there is generally a scoreboard of some sort, but it's generally mostly solo events. Again, the aim is to get a flag, right? Very similar to CTFs, you get a flag in a specific format, you perform some hack on one of these machines and you gain access to that flag. There's generally an escalation privilege which leads you to a second flag. Challenges like CTFs are split into different categories, so web applications, network, reverse engineering, forensics, that type of thing. They are generally rated from easy to difficult, just like in CTFs, however, they're generally not point-based. Once again, like CTFs, you get 1 or 2 vulnerabilities that you have to find per challenge. These hacking training boxes are generally built to train you. The clue is in the name, right? They train you in these hacking capabilities. So it is a great platform to learn new hacking challenges. Bug bounties. This is a bit of a contentious one because some people really love them, some people really hate them. They are very different to CTFs and to the hacker training. Bug bounties are not time limited. Generally, bug bounties are put up by a company and they are kept up for ages because people can just submit new findings whenever they do find them. These are generally solo events, right? You don't generally get a team of people working on bug bounties. You generally get one person working on a bunch of bug bounties. The aim with a bug bounty, rather than the CTFs or the hacking training, is not to find a particular flag, but to find actual vulnerabilities. Now, it's generally just one attack, right? You don't generally get a lot of bug bounties in general that kind of do more than one thing, right? You're just looking for one vulnerability and you report that one vulnerability. So with bug bounties, unlike hacking challenges or CTFs, the scope of it is very, very limited, right? You are generally given these web apps or these network ranges, for example, or a bunch of IPs. It's generally just that. It's generally just one particular thing that you're looking at. So it's a very narrow scope of things. Each finding you find requires you to create a report, right? So you have to write a report about what the finding is, why it matters, how you remediate it, sometimes, depending on the bug bounty platform or program. That's very unlike CTFs. That's very unlike the hacker training, unless you're doing something like the OSCP. This is a requirement. If you do not give a good report, you do not get the vulnerability seen. You don't get it even sort of triage, right? They're not likely to give you money if there is not a good report, right? Good reports mean good bounties. Now, this is the great thing. You may make some money out of bug bounties. You are very unlikely to make them out of CTFs, and you are very unlikely to make them out of hacking training. Obviously, there are big competitions that do pay out, But in general, you are likely to make some money out of bug bounties, but not out of the other two. It's really important to understand that this is not a training platform, right? They aren't there to help you get better. They aren't teaching you anything. You are there to help them, right? And if you help them, then they give you a reward back. There is no system for them to say, actually, maybe you should try this, maybe you should do that. So it's not a training platform. Finally, on to pen testing. Now, I've been a pen tester for decades, so I know what I'm talking about when I say this is very, very different to a bug bounty or a CTF or any of the other training that we've been talking about. A pen test is really, really a different breed. So it is generally time limited because clients are paying you for only a set amount of time, right? They can only pay X amount of money. They have a budget for pen testing, and that time is very limited. You can only work between the dates that they give you for all sorts of reasons. It is generally a company rather than an individual that's doing this. Sometimes if you're working with a company, it is a team of individuals doing this pen test because you're trying to get as much covered in the time that you have. The aim here is very, very different to everything else. With bug bounties, you're just trying to find one vulnerability just to get paid, right? With CTFs, you're trying to find the one or two things to get the flag. With hacker training, you're trying to get one or two things in order to get the flag. With pen testings, you have to find every possible vulnerability that you think is there. Now, you don't know if there's anything there. You don't know how many there are, right? With a hacking training or with a CTF, you know there is a particular vulnerability there, but you cannot tell that with a pen test, right? So you get no knowledge beforehand. You have to find as much as you can in the time limit that you're given. Another thing you have to do is test all of the attack vectors that you think that application or that network is vulnerable to. The scope on these can be vast, or it can be very narrow, right? You may get, okay, I only want you to look at this one web app, kind of like in a bug bounty. It's just one app and you've got 5 days to do it. Or it could be, you have a class B network, find everything you can, right? And that may be for 2 or 3 weeks work, right? So it can be incredibly huge, right? You have to do a lot of work up front just to find all of the assets, let alone try and find all of the vulnerabilities with those assets. This is where it gets really hard. You have to write a report about every single finding that you have, right? You cannot just say, here are all the critical ones. Here is this one thing that got me into the box. I did it on day 3. Fine, great, there we go. That's it. We'll just rub our hands on that. It's not like that. You have to report everything that you can to the client because they are paying you for that service, right? So this is the bit that takes most of the time, right? Because you're not talking about one issue that's one report or one page. Generally with a bug bounty, for example, that report will just be one issue and you'll write maybe a page on what that issue is. With a pen test report, it can be tens of pages. I think the last one that I did was something like 57 pages. So there was quite a few issues, not that many for a big network that we were testing, but 57-page report that had to be written in the time frame that we had. This is the best bit. You are guaranteed money, right? Unless you massively mess up, you've already gone through the whole client process where you have scoped it out, you've spoken with them, you've sorted out all the contracts. There's loads of legal stuff to worry about, loads of stuff like insurance, for example. You have to have that all in place, but it is a contract between you and the client, and they have to pay you for the work that you have done. This is a big one. It is definitely not a place to train. You may work with a more senior pen tester. So if you're a junior pen tester in a role, you may be working with a senior pen tester, but it is generally not the place to learn stuff, right? You might find some really interesting things. If you are, if you're experienced in this job, you may find some 0 days within some equipment. We've done that ourselves on just regular pen tests. You find something that looks quite important and somehow your gut tells you should dig into it a bit more. It's great for that, right? But this is not where you learn how to use Nmap. This is not where you learn to use Nessus. This is not where you learn you really shouldn't scam printers. You should know all of this stuff before you get into pen testing. As I mentioned earlier, there are legal ramifications around pen testing, right? This isn't just like, oh, you might be done under the CMA because you haven't got legal entitlement to attack these things. This is big stuff. If you take down stuff that you shouldn't have done, if you go out of scope, if you touch anything that you shouldn't, then there could be legal ramifications from the client. You know, this is really high level stuff, but it's important that you understand these things before you try and get into pen testing. So I want to finish up with a summary of everything that we've covered, right? So we're going to go through a bunch of criteria so that we can compare all of these things. So a CTF, there are 1 to 2 challenges. There's generally 1 to 2 vulnerabilities. You're always sure, you're guaranteed that there is a vulnerability, because otherwise it wouldn't be a CTF. It doesn't need a report written. The scope is generally just 1 challenge, and it's very unlikely that you'll get money from it. This is the cool thing. There is generally public knowledge or walkthroughs available for CTFs, right? And generally after the fact, they'll do write-ups on some CTF challenges. And there's generally a leaderboard. With hacker training, again, 1 to 2 challenges, 1 to 2 vulnerabilities that you need to find. You are guaranteed that there is at least 1 vulnerability. It doesn't generally need a report written. There's generally just 1 challenge is the scope. Very unlikely to make money out of it. There are generally a lot of walkthroughs for these, right? Because they stay up for a long time. And so people do them and they give really great walkthroughs on what they're doing and how to solve these challenges. You shouldn't really watch those unless you get really stuck. You should try and work them out yourselves, but these are available. Do use them as a resource. And yes, there's generally a leaderboard on hacker challenges because, yeah, who got it first, who owned the root system first, that type of thing. Bug bounties, well, you can't be guaranteed that there are any vulnerabilities there. There's probably at least 1, but you can't be sure, right? Because some companies narrow the focus of the scope so much that, well, maybe there's 1 or 2 kind of small issues. You're generally guaranteed you have to write a report for this, and generally it's 1 report per issue. And there's no exec summary to worry about, there's no management summary, there's no appendices. It's just, here is 1 issue, here is how it affects you. Again, limited scope generally on these. You may make money out of this. You probably won't, but you might, right? If you're skilled, if you're looking for the right things, if you're not looking for what everyone else is looking for, you might make some money out of this, right? Even if you spend, 2 or 3 weeks on it, you may make some money, you may not. You take your chance. Sometimes people publish their reports. Sometimes, some of these platforms, they actually publish reports. A lot of the times the really interesting ones are kept quiet because that's part of the process, right? The client of the bug bounty system wants to know the vulnerabilities, but they don't want to necessarily publish these vulnerabilities because they have to get them fixed and they may not be able to fix them. Sometimes there's a leaderboard on these things. So the last one is pen testing. You are absolutely not guaranteed to find anything interesting. You may just walk away with a couple of informational things that they're not going to care about because it's not business critical. They may just accept that risk. So you can't be certain that you are going to find the killer vulnerability that is going to lead to a remote code execution and get you domain access on whatever network you're testing. It's really hard to understand that, but sometimes companies actually do security really well. You need to write a report that covers absolutely everything. If you're not covering it in the report, they can't fix it. And that is what you are trying to do as a pen tester. You are trying to help them become a more secure company. Money is an essential here, right? Because if you're doing pen testing for them, you're providing them a service, they have to pay you for that. So it's guaranteed money, unlike the others where you may or may not make money. There's almost no public write-ups on a lot of these issues. You can learn about them, you can perform them as part of hacking training or part of bug bounties, but generally a lot of companies keep these reports as sacred. They don't ever publish them because why would they? So you are going to find a few, especially CVEs. You'll find up a lot of CVEs are written up, but in general, most reports are not given out to the public. And there's no leaderboard. No one can say I'm the #1 hacker at Pentesting this company because no one keeps track of that. Where to go from here? So after watching this video, I suggest going to ctftime.org. It's a great place to find new CTFs that are coming and take part in those. Pico CTF has been going forever. There's loads of great challenges on there. Go to Try Hack Me, Pentester Lab, Hack the Box for some great hacker training, and go and sign up to HackerOne, Integrity, and BugCrowd for getting into bug bounties. If you want to get into pen testing, well, that's a whole different video. So thank you very much for watching. Please do like this video if it has helped you in any way, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel because it really helps me to grow.